waving to the mystery cameras. Good evening and welcome to the Whitman-Hanson Regional Agreement Amendment Committee meeting of December 4th, 2017. I'd like to remind everyone this meeting is being recorded for use at a later date. It is also being broadcast live. And I'd like to thank everyone for coming this evening. First thing on the agenda is to approve the November 13th, 2017 minutes, which are attached. Has everybody had time to read them?
Yeah.
Or to look at them quickly?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes with the following amendments. On page 1, the spelling of Rick Anderson's name should be S-O-N, not S-E-N.
That's easy enough.
On the back page, page 4, omitting section 6, amendments, no changes. The committee will begin review of section 6 amendments at the next meeting, and omit the word leases on the very last line. That was not handed out. It was not a handout.
Second one?
Let's discuss the whole thing. We'll get it updated, I guess.
Okay. Somebody want to second that?
I'll second that.
Discussion? All those in favor of the amendment to the minutes as Mr. Small just discussed? All those opposed? All those abstaining? You don't have to abstain, Mr. Hickey. Why are you abstaining?
Only because I missed the beginning of the discussion.
Okay.
He's like, I don't know what's going on.
Because I was late.
Thank you. I'd entertain a motion to accept as amended.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor? Okay. Thank you. Welcome.
Abstention.
And one abstention.
Wasn't here.
Okay, I'm going to turn the meeting over to these two lovely gentlemen that have been with us the whole time.
Great, thank you. Several opening comments here. One is we had a short turnaround time, obviously, between the last meeting this time and the future. By January meeting, we'll have your packets out and with the agenda and the minutes and whatever you need to be looking at sooner. And we appreciate Michelle's minutes that we've been negotiating with her on the minutes and did a nice job on that. When we get started, Steve is going to go over the part that we discussed last time and just go over the changes that we made as a result of your discussion last time. And then I'm going to take over in section 6 and go forward in the future. I wanted to mention that you'll see that we have two versions of your regional agreement. The one has red, blue, and green highlights in it, or wording. That's the one that has all three of those will be the one we'll be looking at. The other one we refer to as the clean copy, and that just would show you if, in fact, you agree, whatever you agree to, the blue part that's stricken is not in this agreement. So this would just be as it would read, obviously all in black at some point if you all agree to it. So it's just to kind of keep a running commentary on exactly what the group has decided so far, but we will be looking at the larger version. As you notice, we've skipped 3 sections about the budget, the assessment, and the debt. We had a conversation last week with Ruth and Christine to make sure that we're on the same page with the kinds of things that we were looking at. So before your next meeting, we will be sending out those 3 sections for you to look at ahead of time to be ready to discuss, assuming that we get through the rest of the document. And the only last thing is the timetable kind of depends on how long it takes us to get through this. We do have some concern if we get through this very quickly, that this will get on your annual town meeting warrants. It can work. Generally, we recommend it not be on your regular annual town meeting, only because there are a lot of other things. If the people in the community are upset about your regular budget, sometimes this kind of thing gets dragged down with other school issues or other town issues. So, but that's obviously going to be up to you at some point. So, Steve will start with the section that we reviewed last time.
Okay.
Before you move forward,
Pardon me?
Mac and Steve, I'm sorry for interrupting.
Yes?
Before we go and go over that, I'd like a general consensus of everyone here about what you just talked about, moving forward and getting this ready for May town meeting. Is anybody opposed to that? There's pros and cons to that, and I'm sure Mac and Steve will rein in, and what he just said holds some valid water to the fact of annual town meetings tend to have 30 to 40 articles, and dragging this to the annual town meeting may prolong it for another hour and drag it into a double night, which sometimes becomes very tedious for town meeting members when there are a tremendous amount of articles. But if we come up with an agreement that has minimal change, which so far we have, we might be able to run right through it. So I just consensually, does anyone have any large issues with doing that? I'd like to obviously get this done. Part of the problem that we have here, both Steve and Mac, is Whitman always has a fall town meeting. I mean, Hanson always does. Whitman generally never does. This year they have it.
Because the contracts are being settled, so we have.
But most of the time, Hanson, it's a ritual in Hanson, they have two. In Whitman, not at all. So if we don't do it at a regular town meeting, they'd have to call a special town meeting, right or wrong, Danny?
Right, but not for one article, we won't do it.
But for one article, it's very costly. So
$3,000.
I didn't know if you guys knew that, bringing that into the picture.
One thing that we've found in a couple of places where we've worked is one of the towns didn't have a fall town meeting, and the school district agreed to pay the $3,000 or whatever it was to have the special town meeting, so that they could happen at the same time. But that's just one way of dealing with it, obviously.
But the town pays for it anyway. If it's out of the school budget, where do you think the school gets their budget? From the town. So it's either right pocket or the left pocket. I think that if we have very little changes to the agenda, to the agreement, that it's just cleaning up, like removing the names of the schools. Come on, a lot of the schools aren't around anymore, right? And you know, the meat and potatoes, very minimum change. I mean, I don't think there's a problem. I mean, you can get up and explain it. You know, somebody from can go to Whitman, Hanson, if they have a,
I understand.
if Whitman passes it, Hanson's gonna probably pass it, or vice versa. So I mean, whoever sees the if we have it in Whitman first, and it doesn't pass, and you see the problems, then maybe you can correct those problems in Hanson, when you have that fall town,
I agree with you. I think they're both pros and cons. But if you look back to the late 1990s, when there was an attempt to make some changes in the regional agreement, it didn't happen. Things were voted in one town, not the other. And some of what may have come into play was just trying to schedule town meetings to be able to do what they needed to do. And so I think there is a validity to do it when you know both towns are going to be meeting at the same time. So
that's a good point. If we, I mean, in May, we have our town meeting
Same
the same
night.
night.
Right.
So if we put it on for that town meeting, and, a representative goes.
It's bound to be
goes,
addressed. It will get addressed.
Right.
Yes, exactly. And that's, I think, maybe partly what happened in the past, is they were trying to, the dates were all over the place.
Right, and especially if the first town doesn't pass it, the second town's gonna say, well, there's gotta be a problem with it. If, we'll say Whitman doesn't pass it, and when it comes to Hanson may turn around and say, Or if Whitman didn't pass it, why are we gonna pass it?
Well, and
vice
that's
versa.
what I think may have happened in the past,
Right.
in 1997, 98, yeah.
Anyone else? I'm just bringing this up as food for thought. Because we have, both of our Maytown meetings are the same night. Anyone else? Mr. Hickey?
Mr. Chairman, only because both towns have the meeting on the same nights, a special town meeting would cost $3,000, which would come out of the school budget, which, like you said, would come out of the town. We're not going to bring it to the town unless we approve it. And most of us sitting around this table were elected officials. So we're not going to approve anything that's not going to benefit the towns. So, I mean, I would say bring it to the Maytown meetings, not only for the savings, but if we don't approve it in this room, then it's not going to go to them anyways. And if the minimal changes in the agreement, such as some of the schools aren't there, then I would think the people that put us in these offices that we have would trust us enough to make the right decision on this agreement.
Okay, Fred?
One idea perhaps is if we are ready for the annual in May, which I think would probably be the preferred venue, being able to notify the public, either through the newspaper, through some cable shows, etc., exactly what the changes are. So they're not walking into town meeting and having to read it to be prepared to vote. So they would have everything in advance of that, maybe even doing a question and answer session.
I think that holds water, and I'm not trying to hold up this meeting, I'm just moving forward. I just want to bring it forward to anybody that might be watching. But the very thing you're saying is the reason I brought it up. You see anybody in the gallery?
I understand.
Okay? Okay.
One of the things.
Anyone else before we move on?
One of the things that the selectmen might consider is putting them in both towns on the first on the warrant so that they could happen at the same time. One of them happens at 7:30 and one of them at 10:30. The second town is probably going to know what happened in the other town. So it's a possibility.
Okay. All right,
Also,
thank you.
one
I
other
wasn't
quick
trying to
aside, when
lengthen
you
this.
were concerned about going on to a second meeting, I was superintendent in Shirley. That town meeting went 7 nights. I have a T-shirt that someone made, a bunch of teachers said, I survived 7 nights of town meeting. It was brutal, so you're lucky if you can get it done on one night.
Okay, thank you.
Surely we don't want that to happen.
Okay, Steve.
Okay, so we're going to pick up where we ended last time, and we'll be operating, as Mac mentioned, from the copy that has the green highlighting first. I'll mention some of the housekeeping items as we go along, but there are 3 changes that you asked us to look at, and we'll focus on, and I'll read those to you. So the first housekeeping one is in that first paragraph. As you can see in the red, we agreed to use the terms MGL and district and so forth. So the first one mentions in the first sentence, the agreement entered into pursuant to Chapter 71 of the General Laws of Massachusetts, herein referred to as MGL. That's the first change from the original agreement that we're looking for you to support. And now I'm going to move to Section 1. Section 1, under A, powers, duties, and composition. I'm going to read to you A, B, and C. C is where the key changes are, but they're dependent somewhat on Part 1, and we'll discuss them briefly after the reading. So, the powers and duties of the regional school, the powers and duties of the district shall be vested in and exercised by a regional school district committee, hereinafter referred to as the committee. The committee shall consist of 10 members. Based on the population of the member towns at the time of amending the regional agreement, 6 members will be from Whitman and 4 members will be from Hanson. B, each member must reside in the town which she or he represents. Each member must be elected consistent with the process for the election of town officials in said town and will be elected to open seats during the annual elections in said town. Each member will serve a 3-year term, with the term staggered so that at least 1 member representing each member town will be elected each year. The term of each elected member will begin on the first business day after his or her election and after being sworn in by the representative town clerk. A member who has not otherwise vacated his or her seat will continue to serve until his or her successor is elected and sworn. C, each member of the committee shall have one vote, and each vote shall be of equal weight unless and until a shift in the respective populations of the member towns, based on the most current United States decennial census estimates, or 5 years in between based on the state census. If a population shift causes an impermissible disparity based on the one-man, one-vote principle, the committee will act to address the disparity by either adjusting the number of committee members or weighting the votes. Okay, that's the first major change, and as you can see, Part C we wrote based on the reworking of Part A. We didn't include C. The number of school committee members would not be flexible, as we talked about last time, and would be stuck with the 6-4 forever without Part C. So we wrote C to give the school committee the option of changing the number of members or the weights of their votes.
The other thing, I think when you read it, you might have seen that he skipped the word permanent, and we should have caught that before in the green, the permanent committee. Because right now, what your agreement says is if the town populations change, you have to stick with 6 and 4. So the only option you would have under your current agreement is to weight the votes. But when we wrote C, we believe, and if we cross out the word permanent there, that the committee, when this is voted on, will be 6 and 4, but C allows you to decide, as Steve said, either keeping the same number and weight them or change the number of school committee members. So we were trying to address, we believe, what you asked us to do.
Okay?
So where's the word permanent going?
It's just being removed.
Oh,
Okay.
but it's in there.
It's being removed from A or C?
A.
From A. Doesn't appear in C, so, I mean,
Got it.
it was in A, and it implied that we would, well, it didn't imply,
It's still there.
But it's still there.
It's still there.
It's in both documents.
well,
I think that's what he's
in
suggesting.
your mind, you have to remove, we're going to remove
Suggesting
it.
one more.
You
We
will
should have
remove
removed it.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
I was,
So you're
Sorry
suggesting
about
that,
So, cross out permanent, is what we're saying.
Both A
so when we vote tonight, we have to vote 1A with an amendment to strike out permanent?
Right,
Okay.
sorry, thank you.
nope, perfect.
I have a question. If you look at C,
See,
is it possible on the third line up to have it say one person, one vote, instead of one man, one vote?
Oh, it should. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Thank you.
Yep, I think it says person some other place. We missed that. Thank you.
I'll catch it. Thanks.
Good.
okay, under 3 is just the, again, housekeeping, you'll see MGL, and I'll read the sentence. The committee shall have all the powers and duties conferred and imposed upon school committees by MGL and conferred and imposed upon it by this agreement and any other laws. Just the red areas are changes in that area. The next change is under E, organization. And again, I'll ask you to strike BE, B in the second line, the first word in the second line, and I'll skip it as I read. At the first regular meeting of the committee, following the latest town election held in each year, the committee shall organize and choose by ballot a chairperson and vice chairperson from its own membership. At the same meeting, or at any other meeting, the committee shall appoint a treasurer and secretary who may be the same person, but who need not be members of the committee. Choose other such offices as it deems advisable, determine the terms of the office of its offices, except the chairperson, who shall be elected annually as provided above, and prescribe the powers and duties of any of its officers, fix the time and place for its regular meetings, and provide for the calling of special meetings. The chairperson will appoint members to serve on committees annually. This last phrase allows us to eliminate A4, which was pointed out last month as a redundant section. You need to add to that?
No?
Under section 2, just the red areas are changes, and that follows under regional school district, section 3, the 912 and PK, which will consistently correct as we go through the document. On page 5, you'll see MGL again under B. The next change is under C, termination of leases.
What page are you?
Page 6. In the event of the withdrawal of a member town from the district, the leases mentioned in subsection 3B shall be terminated at the effective date of such withdrawal. It's a suggestion from the committee, and we've made that change as well. Section 4, we're skipping till the January meeting. Section 5 on page 8, under school transportation. School transportation shall be provided by the district. Cost of state-mandated pupil transportation shall be determined by dividing the total cost of transportation minus the estimated Chapter 71 transportation reimbursement by the ratio of each member town's enrollment as of October 1 to the sum of the member town's enrollments as of October 1 of the immediately preceding year in which the costs are to be assessed. The cost of non-mandated pupil transportation will be paid by the respective member town. And that's the addition that we discussed at some length at the last meeting.
Can I go back to the beginning of the red? Christine, is that, we sort of talked about that. Is that what you do? Is it divided? You do it as a operating cost assessment, right?
Yes, we do that. We do it based on mandated versus non-mandated. We don't literally take the total cost of the transportation minus what we anticipate getting in the Chapter 71 transportation reimbursement, because if we did it that way, the transportation assessment to the towns would be twice as much as it is right now. So in other words, what we do is we determine how many kids ride the bus that are over 1.5 miles and under 1.5 miles. So then we do a percentage of the kids from each town, and that's how we determine the percentage of the total operating cost for transportation.
Percentage of riders or percentage?
Riders.
Not the percentage of kids in school, the 60-40 split?
No, it's percentage of riders in each town.
Okay, then we're going to need to.
Yeah, I thought we talked about this.
Yeah.
So we need to relook at that, because if we did it, like, for example, right now, it's 1.5 million, and if we get 600,000, then we'd have to, the transportation assessment would be split 60-40, 900,000. And right now, Whitman's paying just over 300,000, and I think Hanson's about 100,000.
But you do subtract the.
Yes, of the overall, when I do, on the overall operating budget, I just take out the 600,000 or whatever we anticipate for transportation off the total operating budget.
Okay. So it's based on the actual ridership, not on.
Ridership, correct.
On your general operating.
Right. It's based on the ridership over and under the 1.5 miles.
All right.
Okay, and comment on that. Even if like if you have a bus and you have, how many seats on the bus?
60, 70.
If you have 60 seats on a bus and there's only 45 kids riding it, there has to be a seat designated to every person that's eligible for a ride, right? Even though they may walk or get a ride from their parents. So
right.
We have to have it just in case they need it.
Right, but
That's correct.
The way Diane does it is over and under 1.5 miles, and then she has a different column for what.
Right, because what I've heard some complaints from residents who said that when they see the bus going into the school, it's half filled. in some areas.
Right, that is,
And I
you're
tried to
absolutely
explain
correct.
that.
Yep,
Yeah, that we're required to provide that.
Well, you're saying, Christine, you do it based on
ridership,
100% of the kids who could ride the bus.
right.
Eligible to ride.
Yeah,
Yep.
eligible to
Because
ride.
legally, I think we have to do that, right?
Yeah. All right, we'll fix that for next time. And then, how about the last sentence? Is
Last
that
phrase.
the very last sentence in that section at the top of page 9?
That's correct, yep.
Yep.
Okay.
And that's, that brings us to the,
Right, so I
what
guess,
we did last time.
Bob, how would you like to handle that?
Rick?
There are two,
I just had one question.
Yep.
Sorry, to back up a bit. Section 3C, page 6, you read the sentence, "In the event of withdrawal of a member town from the district, the leases mentioned in subsections 3B shall be terminated," and you left "at." Would that be more effective to be "on," if you're going to go effective date?
where,
Yes, on the effective date of such withdrawal.
Page 6, it's just
So instead of "at the
Be
time,"
on,
you'd
yes,
be
that would be more appropriate.
just correct grammar.
on the time?
No, there's no time, on the effective date of such withdrawal.
Okay.
Okay? Thank you.
Yep.
Anything else?
So, there are three things that need to be altered. If we go back and refer, we're going
Permanent?
to take out the word permanent and 1A, A1A. We're going to change one person, one vote at the bottom of that first page. And we're going to cross out the word BE under the second line of organization. So with those three adjustments, which we'll make for next time,
One he just gave me.
and the one, yes,
It's
so that's four.
total.
On C. So I guess you can do it either two ways. You can vote to do that with those exceptions, or again, we can wait till we get it perfect.
Got it perfect.
All right, and then you can vote on
Everybody
it.
good with that?
All right, so we'll
Do
just
one
highlight
vote. We
those.
won't have to amend, it'll be much cleaner
All right,
in the minutes.
we'll just highlight those four things next time and start with that. It should take 5 minutes, and then we'll move on. Okay, good, thank you. So, starting with 6. So the question is, it came up at the end of last time, do you want that all read into for the audience, or you want to just go to the sections that may have changes?
Just do the changes.
All right. So, page 10, section 7, admission of additional towns. And again, I will not read anything that's stricken. It's in blue. So, section 7, admission of additional towns. A, by an amendment of this agreement adopted under and in accordance with section 6 above, any other town or towns may be admitted to the district upon adoption as therein provided of such amendment and upon acceptance at a special or annual town meeting by a majority vote by the town or towns seeking admission of the agreement as so amended. Acceptance by a minimum of 2/3 of the member towns, each by majority vote, and also upon compliance with such provisions of law and regulations, for example, the Code of Massachusetts Regulations, hereinafter known as CMR, that is CMR 603-41.056, as amended, as may be applicable, and such terms as may be set forth in such amendment. B, the committee, so this is all new wording here, B and C. The committee, prior to the admittance of a new member town, will have the option of establishing the amount of any costs additional to costs referenced in section 10 to that new member town to be included in the district. These additional costs will be clearly articulated to the Regional Planning Committee of the potential new member town or towns, and will be made clear to the voters prior to that new member town's vote on admission to the district. Again, this was really came from DESE, that they wanted to make it clear that if any school committee were going to impose some initiation fee, for example, let's say I assume you still have some debt on this school. If another town wanted to come in next year, I assume that the committee would say, well, you have to pay your share of the debt that's already been paid in this up to this point. So that just allows the school committee to do that, to set some kind of parameters of what it might cost a new town to get into the district. And C, yes?
Would that mean, for example, and I think it would, but not only one-time cost, but we could make that, we could argue that point of saying you have to pay X for the next 10 years. We could set it up any way we wanted to. It doesn't hold us to a one-time payment.
Correct.
It could hold us to, we're going to lease a portion of this to you and see how it works. So any language we want to make.
It does hold you to making that clear up front if you're going to do that for the next 10 years.
But I'm just saying, it doesn't hold us to a one-time payment.
No.
It's anything that we determine and negotiate.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
And C, a new member town may be admitted to the district as of July 1st of any fiscal year, provided that all requisite approvals for such admission, including the Commissioner of Elementary and Secondary Education, hereinafter known as the Commissioner, approval, shall be obtained no later than the preceding December 31st. I think I mentioned at our first meeting that in this process, we're not talking about adding or deleting a town. Therefore, theoretically, the towns could vote on June 30th, and it could go into effect the next day on July 1st. If you're going to add a new member town or subtract a current member town, the commissioner has to approve this by the preceding December 31st. And obviously, the key is to help the administration plan the budget for the next year, that you wouldn't want to find out in June that a new member town is coming in and you haven't organized your budget to meet that. So anyway, that's the two differences. So this is talking about adding a town, so it has to be approved by everyone by the preceding December 31st. Any questions, comments on that section?
Chris?
On section B there, on you're introducing this regional planning committee concept, I think. I don't think that's really defined anywhere throughout the document. Can we just change it to a regional planning committee rather than the? Because I think that's your intent, right? That there would be a creation of a new committee. I just don't want someone to read this and say, where's reference to the regional management?
Yep, good point.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Obviously a lot to digest, but you'll have another 6 weeks before you can, okay, then turning over to page 11, procedure. I probably should start at the beginning since it gets changed quite a bit at the end. The clerk of the town seeking to withdraw shall notify the committee in writing that such town has voted to request the committee to draw up an amendment to the agreement, enclosing a certified copy of such vote. Thereupon, the committee shall draw up an amendment to the agreement, setting forth such terms of withdrawal as it deems advisable, subject to the limitation contained in subsection 6A. The secretary of the committee shall mail or deliver a notice in writing to the Board of Selectmen of each member town that the committee has drawn up an amendment to the agreement providing for the withdrawal of a member town. I should have prefaced this by in the previous page that we didn't change anything. This is assuming that some other town has already voted to get out, and this is the follow-up to that. The selectmen of the non-withdrawing member town shall include in the warrant for the next annual or special town meeting called for the purpose of an article the terms of withdrawal. It should be a period there. Then such amendment shall become effective on a July 1st, no less than 1 full year after the approval of the non-withdrawing member town. Acceptance by each town to be a majority vote at a town meeting, as aforesaid, and after approval by the commissioner, no later than the preceding December 31st. Okay, and we've crossed out your current C and have a new C, obligations of withdrawing member towns. This, we've found, needs to be spelled out more. I think I mentioned to you in our first meeting that if there isn't something that's fairly specific about what the responsibility is of the withdrawing member town, they might be able to get away without paying their fair share of the debt that was accrued during the time they were in the region. In addition to other terms and requirements which the committee shall include in the amendment, the member town seeking to withdraw will be responsible for the following. 1, payment of all operating costs for which it is liable as a member of the district. 2, continuing payments beyond the time of withdrawal to the district for the member town's share of the indebtedness of the district which is outstanding at the time of such withdrawal, and for interest thereon to the same extent and in the same manner as though the town had not withdrawn from the district. 3, other liabilities incurred during all times that the town was a member of the district, including OPEB, which is other post-employment benefits. And 4, for the costs, including legal fees, that accrue to the district as a result of the withdrawal process. So the most important part there is the OPEB. Obviously, that's, I mentioned that happening out in the Gateway region when one town of the 7 towns got out, and it didn't say anything about OPEB in there, so they're saying, even though they were a member of the region for many years, they're not taking responsibility for that, and they're putting it on the other 6 towns that are left in the region. So the state
It spells out the huge liability to the towns for past debt they incurred when they were part of the region, and they're not liable, they are liable, and they won't walk away so quickly.
Right.
If they're going to be paying that debt, which is only fair and equitable, truthfully.
That's right. Mm-hmm. So this language tries to be more specific to protect the region. Mm-hmm. Okay, D on page 12. By the way, so far, I shouldn't admit this, but we haven't figured out how to remove the 12 at the top as well as at the bottom. We have 2 numbers on every page, and for some reason we haven't figured that out yet. But approval of withdrawal, D. A request to withdraw shall become effective only if the amendment to the agreement is approved by a majority vote of the committee, is approved by a majority vote at an annual or special town meeting in the member towns, is approved by the commissioner, and the withdrawal can become effective on a July 1st, no later than 1 full year after the completion of these requirements.
No less.
Yes, or less. No less than 1 full year. Yes, thank you. So again, trying to tighten it up to not let someone leave in the middle of the night and leave the district with a lot of costs that they shouldn't have to bear. In E, in terms of cessation of terms of withdrawing towns members, again, the only thing was changed actually in F at the end. The laws do still no longer require that if a town leaves and they pay some money up front to the district, it used to have to be put in a Massachusetts bank that had a combined capital surplus of not less than $5 million. And that isn't necessary anymore, so we've stricken that. Okay, anything else with that section?
Questions, anyone?
All right, moving right along. Section 10, withdrawal of elementary grades pre-kindergarten through 8. You'll see there are a couple of places where we just added the PK to 8. In B, for some reason, you'll see there's red letters and the strike-through is there, unfortunately, following the blue strike-through, so that shouldn't be, and as approved by the commissioner should be in there. Is there red letters, the strike-through should not be there. But that's no other changes there. Section 10, the budget. we're going to skip till January. Section 11 should be stricken there because we have language that will come to you in January. So at this point, and at that point, obviously, you'll see that Section 11 will be crossed out in blue, and we'll propose additional language there about debt. So tuition students, Section 12. The committee may accept for enrollment in the regional school district pupils from towns other than the member towns on a tuition basis and on such terms as it may determine. Now, this may have a little controversy. We'll add a little something to this, but you'll see what's crossed out there. Is income received by the regional school district from tuition pupils shall be deducted from the total operating costs in the next annual budget to be prepared after the receipt thereof prior to the apportionment under a subsection 4E to the member towns. You may remember in the first meeting, one of the reasons to strike that is that many school districts now find that with special education students, it is less expensive for the community to have a program in-house. Maybe you only have two children that need that service, but if you can get tuition from another town or two and bring in, say, 2 more children and add that to the pool, you can hire a teacher less expensively than sending those 2 children out. So if you had to automatically send all the tuition money back to the town, you wouldn't be able to afford to do that on your local school district and pay more. You would end up paying more money out of district. So that's one of the reasons. It doesn't say that you can't do that, and I'm guessing that, Christine, obviously when you get any tuition money, that's in the total, in the bottom line of your budget, so you will see. Is that a correct assumption? Any tuition money, they will see in the budget, and it'll kind of automatically reduce the assessment.
It's used to pay for a teacher or whatever the program needs.
Yeah.
We only have, what, 2?
We have 1 and possibly a second.
Yeah, so it's not a lot.
Yeah. So if it's not needed for something like that, I would assume it would be used to reduce the assessment. Is that correct?
Right.
It just goes on
But
the
it's-
bottom line?
Yeah, goes to the bottom line. There wouldn't be that, I don't think there'd ever be that much, so.
But if you could charge $25,000 tuition for a student to come in, and it was going to cost you $150 to send them out to someplace.
Right, absolutely.
It would make economic sense to do that. So I guess that's up to this committee, obviously, whether that's okay, what we've done there.
Question, doesn't that, when you get tuition like that, that just goes listed under receipts?
Right,
in the budget. So that's part of the receipts coming in, so when you do the budget and you need X amount of dollars and you have X amount of money in receipts, that balances out what you
yeah, what happens is that money comes in and it's in a separate revolving account, and then we charge certain things there that wouldn't be charged to the operating budget. So it's the same thing.
Right. One offsets the other.
One offsets the other, correct.
And what it does, Danny, is it allows you to save money in the long-term effect. By not,
I wish it was more.
Well, I mean, when we buy a fire truck or something like that, we use money out of the ambulance account.
Right.
Right? Buying it for the town, but it's coming.
Right.
Instead of the ambulance money going to the town budget, it goes to the ambulance.
Right. Same thing.
Yeah.
And I assume in the year subsequent, it would be part of the projected revenue anyway, right?
Right. So
So
in
we
other
wouldn't be
words-
asking the town, we wouldn't
Right,
know
so
it.
if the prior year, say we got 30,000 in, and I paid for half a teacher, say, a special education teacher for that particular program, then the next year, that person wouldn't be budgeted in the operating budget, because I'm anticipating getting the tuition of 30,000. So it's an offset, it's the same, exactly,
Something like grants.
yep.
I
And
don't
that,
think-
go
I
ahead.
don't think we're going to be in a position that we have excess funds.
No, because some years, what can happen too is you have, say, we're tuitioning 2 kids, and then next year, a kid leaves. So it could go the opposite way, right? That it wasn't in the operating budget, and then you have to,
You get your charter school,
right,
tips and all that. I'd like to have the problem that we have too much money.
I was gonna say, the variable to that is, you take in $30,000, but that one student may need a paraprofessional specifically for that student. So your your net gain isn't 30, it's,
10.
12 or 10 that year, so it's.
It's ultimately in there for the saving of funds.
Right. Well, actually, we've gone through this much more speedily than I thought we were going to do here. So the last sections here, really, they're basically all crossed out. Section 13 is about employment of personnel and extension of tenure. That's when school districts regionalize for the first time. There are laws that require you to continue employing all the teachers that were there before. You can't use regionalization as an excuse to fire a whole lot of people. So obviously that's not relevant anymore because you're already a pre-K to 12 region. So section 13 can be eliminated. Section 14, again, the jurisdiction, that's already been taken care of because you're a pre-K to 12 region. Section 15, about your advisory council on education. My understanding is that that's not something that you do or want in there. That's, again, is that the case? We don't need that, okay? Section 16 on the transition, obviously you've already gone through the transition, that's not necessary. And 17, transition to the regional school district, jurisdiction by member towns, grades pre-kindergarten through 8. So when pre-K to 8 came into the region, that was relevant then, but it's not anymore. Wow. And then the last page is just changing or updating who signs things. Generally, the law says that somebody from the school committee has to sign it, and they prefer the town clerk or the select person's chair to sign it. There's nothing that prevents all the school committee members from signing it, all the members of the selectmen to sign it. But there has to be someone, and in some respects, actually, the state prefers the clerk to sign it because they assume that the clerk will certify that the vote has been taken by your communities and have agreed to this. But, so it can be anything, either there.
That kind of answers my next question, if we would have to attach the minutes of the meeting where the vote was taken, but we're accepting the fact that the Board of Selectmen have already had the vote taken and we're letting them sign.
Yeah, they don't think they require the minutes. I think they do require a note from the clerk certifying that the vote is taken.
Okay.
That's all, yep.
Yeah. Chris?
Quick question on 15, that advisory council on education, do we have that today? Are we doing anything with that?
We have school councils, but we don't have that, no.
Okay, so that's.
I don't even know what it is.
Is the school council a requirement, or is that just something?
That's state law.
Okay, got it. Thank you. So that's not this.
Right.
It's not this, yeah.
Got it.
And this was obviously put in before
Way before all of that.
that was required.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this was just one general one for the whole district. Now you have to have one for every
Each
school.
yeah.
Thank you.
So as I said, we made it through here. The only other sections are the sections on the budget and assessments, and we just didn't think we were going to get this far tonight. So we will have, in the middle of next month, a packet with all that information about the budget and the assessments and the debt, and maybe that will go as quickly as this.
Yeah, it's great.
So I think that's all we have then tonight.
Questions from anyone? Now's the time to kick it out there.
Right.
Transportation will also revisit next time, right? The transportation assessment?
Yes.
Yeah, make sure the language is what you agree with, yeah.
Right.
We have 8 changes. We'll bring those back with the transportation, the 9. And
Great.
you ready to go with the budget and assessment and debt?
Questions, anyone? I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Before we leave, just for the record, for anyone watching, the next meeting,
It's the end of January,
it's after the break, and it's in January.
29th, the 29th,
January 29th,
6 o'clock, right here.
6 o'clock here in the library. So ladies and gentlemen, for those people watching, the next meeting of this committee, which is the Regional Agreement Amendment Committee, is January 29th, 2018, 6 p.m. here in the Whitman-Hanson Regional Library. We would love to have your attendance. If you would like to speak on the agreement, please attend. Thank you.
Bob, one thing, you may want to explain what we'll be discussing at our next meeting, because we're going to get into some meat and potatoes as far as money is concerned, right?
Next meeting, we'll be discussing the budgetary assessments that the towns will be talking about, which town and how it's going to be assessed. So it is a financial piece of this. We're not saying it's going to change. We're just saying that's what the budget, the next meeting is going to be about, the budget of the assessments to each member town, so. Thank you. Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, whatever your pleasure, and good night.
Those of us who are...